Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
Something had gone wrong in the noble Marksman family. Elizabeth did not understand where the impeccable system of upbringing had failed. Why the rules and traditions of the family, which had been the law from birth, did not protect her sons from the ugly lowbrow farce. Endured at the cost of sacrifice and restrictions hammered into the heads of children. Family values did not resist the abomination. Nothing is lost. She's strong, she'll make it right. Elizabeth sat in a chair in the middle of the living room. The room looked strange, antique mahogany furniture, layered, lush curtains. There were voluminous sofas in plans and lace, floor clocks, wide and luxurious doors, and even the chair where Elizabeth sat was a large, antique, extensive tapestry in large colors. It was like a nobleman's manor of the early part of the last century. True, there was some incongruity to the rich, beautiful, antique look, but something was disconcerting. Either too much detail or a lack of taste. You could see they tried, but maybe they'd overdone it. The living room was not in a mansion in a huge 5-room apartment with large windows and high ceilings. Elizabeth had earnestly referred to the apartment as the ancestral nest of the Marksman family. Though in her 54 years of age, she did not suffer from Erasmus, and knew perfectly well that it was not so. There was some truth to it. Lisa was born here, and her parents owned one of the rooms in a communal apartment. Since childhood, Lisa read novels of classics about life, imagined interiors of noble mansions, drew dresses in which noble ladies walked in the halls. She wanted to live at that time in that atmosphere, not in this miserable communal room. Warmed up and fantasies of the girl's grandmother. With stories about life in a rich house. Especially admired the foundations, traditions of the family, the non-observance of which was impossible. Grandmother was a maid in that house, but Lisa quickly forgot about it. But she began to consider herself a descendant of a noble family. And no one dissuaded her. Let the child fantasize. Who's harmed by it? The problems became apparent when Lisa grew up. Blue blood did not allow her to communicate on equal terms with her peers, always looking down on them with a share of squeamishness. Useless people without purpose or ideals. Lisa was well educated. She spoke 2 languages fluently. With her manners and etiquette, she could outshine any diplomat. She is unconditional. A queen that everyone else has the right to admire, but dare not approach. Easy to get over student romances. Love and passion are not her thing. It's the lot of the poor in spirit. Foolish. Boys to whom she condescended. She herself chose favorites herself ruthlessly, in an instant sent them away. She chose her husband thoughtfully, calculating all the pros and cons of future marriage. I chose the right one, not of noble blood. Where you'll find such a man nowadays, but a worthy one. Biochemist, professor, academician. Charles Marksman was 25 years older, but a world-renowned scientist, wealthy and intelligent. What a lot of people, and the elite. Lisa, well, what are you doing? Mom, read it. He's our age, and you need to have children. He's had 2 wives and no children. Maybe he's not capable. What do you need a mom like that for? Charles Marksman is going to Europe to lecture for 3 years. I'm going with him. My children will be born in Europe. They will be the heirs of academician Marksman, no matter what he can or can't do. He needs heirs. I need status. All your young prodigies won't give me a fraction of what Charles Marksman can. Besides, they're stupid and ill-mannered. Elizabeth gave birth to 2 sons, Kevin and Eugene, a year and a half apart. Whether Marksman was their father is known only to Elizabeth, but the academician himself has never expressed doubts. However, great love for his sons did not show, even relations with a minimum of emotions, and he liked that his wife, despite her youth, considers his goal to create a patriarchal family and bring up his sons in deference to the father and unquestioning obedience to his will. And Elizabeth was building her noble nest of upbringing, education, family traditions, obedience, impossibility to cross parents. All this was beaten out of me from a small age. The children were never called Kev and Eugen, only Kevin and Eugene. The full name sounds noble and boosts self-esteem. The daily routine is rigid. Not to be late for a family lunch or dinner missed is a mortal sin. All the boys' friends were introduced to Elizabeth, unsuitable acquaintances were cut off. When Lisa's parents died, she decided she didn't need a room in a communal apartment. She needs the whole apartment. It's her ancestral nest. Marksman did not object. The girl got it into her head, so let it be. It took a long time, about 5 years, but it worked. Then came remodeling, renovation, living room, dining room, boudoir. Charles Marksman was tired of his wife's fantasies, but thank God, nothing but money was demanded of him. He obediently paid and did not express dissatisfaction. He is provided with all conditions for rest after academic labors. What else is needed at his venerable age? When the academician died, at his coffin stood unrestrained widow and grateful sons. But there was no special sorrow in their eyes. There was family, there were traditions and rules, but there was no feeling. And after Marksman's death, this was especially evident. Kevin and Eugene felt as if they were being set free. No more obeying and bowing down. The idol was dead. Kevin and Eugene, the family is left without a head. Now you must take responsibility for the family. Dad was in charge. He was a good man, but he wasn't an eagle. Kevin, how dare you? You thought we couldn't see who's in charge. We don't mind. Just don't make us believe that the family was led by a strong and wise academic. Mother, you said what you had to say, but we have no claim to the throne. We continue to reign. From that moment on, everything went downhill. Elizabeth thought she was in control, but Kevin suddenly left on an expedition somewhere in the mountains. And Eugene, though he stayed with her, completely stopped sharing his plans and problems with his mother. She realized that years of intertwining family nest suddenly began to fall apart a little stronger wind, and it will simply blow away. More to come. Kevin returned from an expedition down the mountain with a marvelously beautiful girl, Nancy, and announced that he was getting married. Elizabeth couldn't allow it. Who was she? From what family? We can't accept a backyard mongrel into the family. Pregnant, especially in our family, never walks. But then it turned out that Kevin, brought up to obey without question, could show his teeth and go against his mother. He said, either you accept us or you will have one son. But Elizabeth would not accept the ultimatum. How dare he? She spent her life building a perfect family, and now some lefty face is ruining it. She didn't give her life in vain. Kev did exactly what Mom taught him to do. He didn't compromise his dignity, didn't trade on honor, took Nancy and left. Eugene was incapable of such radical behavior. He introduced all his girls to his mom, and they all fell short of family standards. Some accepted resignation without complaint, cried, and forgot. And someone else, not shy in expressions, explained to Eugene and his mom what he thought about their family values. And where would they go with those values? Eugene, you see what kind of girls surround you, stupid and inconsiderate and boorish. No upbringing, no education. Do you want to tie your life to such a low-class person? The example of his older brother has not taught him anything. His so-called wife is about to give birth, and he will survive from bread to water and raise a child with questionable heredity. Mom, I can't find a wife by your standards. The Princess of Monaco won't marry me. 10 years from now, I'll be a scrap of filth, a wife-hater who can't get out of his mommy's skirt. And no one will need me anymore. Eugene, don't you dare say that. Well, yes, in my statement only the insufficiently intelligent syllable attracts. The rest is nothing. Mom, you're not playing at being a noblewoman. Maybe you should give up the barking and live a real life in real time. Living in real time doesn't mean living with boorish and marginalized people. Eugene stopped, and arguing with his mother was useless. Soon he married the daughter of a music critic and a pianist, a young gray mouse named Ninel. In infancy, Ninel, to the standards, did not reach, but intelligence peaked at the fishless will do. Ninel was terribly timid in front of her mother-in-law. Everything she said was true. At last, Elizabeth found admiring listeners and uncomplaining admirers of her pedagogical talent. This girl will do well. Smart and suggestible. The choice is well made. Elizabeth did not communicate with her eldest son. Disobedience to the parental will is not forgiven, but the mother's heart aches. By her reckoning, Kevin's worthless wife should have given birth a year ago, but no son had shown up. Eugene was worried too. He missed his brother, and his mother's forbidden communication didn't stop him. But Kev disappeared. He didn't answer his cell phone. Where did he live now? Eugene didn't know. A call to work didn't turn up anything either. Kevin had quit a year ago. Eugene decided to go there. Someone must know why he quit, where he was going to work. Maybe one of his former coworkers knows where he lives. They wouldn't talk to him. They averted their eyes, just generalities. Eugene saw they know what happened and where his brother is. But Kev must have asked him not to tell his family. The more they dismissed him, the stronger the sense of distress. How could he explain to them that he wasn't going to bring his son back into the family? He ran away, and he did the right thing. He would have run away himself, but he didn't have the guts, just to find out what happened. One of Kevin's coworkers watched Eugene's remarks for a long time. Then he came over. Let's talk. I know Kev will give me a hard time later, but he needs help. He's sure your mom's gonna be more trouble than help. But I'll tell you what happened next. Think, whether or not to share with your mom. Turns out Kev had been living his life for a long time. He had buddies and friends he preferred not to tell his mom about. He knew she wouldn't approve. I didn't think much of Nancy either. Ordinary girls from the backwoods. Neither royalty nor oligarch daddy's mom would accept not our format. But he loved Nancy, and even made an attempt to bring her into the family. However, with predictable results, they were happy. Kev never regretted choosing Nancy over a family. No more living in a noble mansion and living out his mother's delusional fantasies. Life is quite different with fresh air, with favorite friends, which you choose with your heart, not by your mother's command. With mountains, seas, unfamiliar cities, with the opportunity to speak as you think, not as you should. A young man of a noble family. Happiness ended abruptly, without warning. Nancy died in childbirth. How could heart problems be traced back months of observation? It's a mystery. Kevin buried his wife, picked up his daughter from the hospital, and quit his job. Friends helped as best they could, but the situation was dire. Single moms don't always make it. And a single dad. It's a one-time thing. The daughter called her Maria. He wanted Nancy, but they said you can't name someone who's just died. Never was superstitious, but he listened. It's true, it's not true. Don't tempt fate. I don't remember Kevin at all for the first 6 months. Feeding, bathing, vaccinations, tummy ache, endless screaming, sleepless nights. I'm dizzy. No thoughts, no feelings. Then it got easier. I got into it. And after a couple of months, I realized that my savings were going to zero. I had to make money. And how can I not go to work? No one to leave Molly with. I can't afford a babysitter. I have to earn money first. It's a vicious circle. Friends helped, but that's not the answer. Kev longed for Nancy, for the work he loved, for the expeditions in which he was king and god, for his mother and brother who had so easily abandoned him. But he didn't want to return to the musty world of artificial nobility. He had lost weight, dishwatered from fatigue, but he didn't ask for help. He could not allow his defenseless little girl. His babe was called a child of dubious heredity. They looked at me with contempt. My grandmother would comment on any misdemeanor, so you can't hide bad genes. I realized I couldn't do it alone, but I couldn't see any way out. Despair sets in. On the car, he would swing his eyelashes open and open his clear, lovely eyes and smile. And Kev began to flounder and once again crawled out of despair. 2 serious ladies from the guardianship authorities showed up. According to their deep conviction, a man alone is incapable of raising a child. He feeds them wrong, dresses them wrong. No order and cleanliness. And then there's the rented apartment, no income. No grandmothers, no aunts. Some dubious friends who can't be trusted with a child. The verdict is in. The child is in danger. Kev could barely contain himself. He wanted to throw them out of the house, but he tolerated it. It wouldn't make things worse. It was clear that if the aunts clung to him, they wouldn't let go, so he was in trouble. and then Molly got sick. She's got a fever, breathing hard, crying nonstop. The pediatrician who came to the call said, "I don't want to scare you, but there's a suspicion of pneumonia. The girl must be hospitalized. Is there any way we can do this without a hospital? I don't want you to risk your child's life." Kevin's eyes were so scared, she added, "Don't worry, Daddy, don't worry so much. The clinic is specialized and the doctors are top-notch. Everything's gonna be okay." Turns out it wasn't okay at all. "No, Molly's fine. She's cured. Only they wouldn't give her to Kevin. The custody ladies are up in arms. You see what he did to that kid." Kev struggled, walked around. But he realized more and more clearly that he was in trouble. Not an alcoholic, not a marginal, but without a job and housing, parental rights will not be revoked. But they can limit the rights. What will happen to the car then? Is it really an orphanage with a living father? It's terrifying. I can't sleep. And then they started, hinting that there is a very good family, which will give the girl a happy future. Refuse the child will be fine. Kev was floundering. He was going crazy and didn't see a way out. That's where Eugene found it. To see his brother in such a state was unbearable. He was exhausted and didn't know how to go on living. Eugene was ready to do anything, but he didn't know how to help his brother. If he didn't agree to the adoption, Molly would end up in an orphanage. This could not be allowed, but Kev could not give up his daughter. He would not ban her pigtails, would not take her to the first grade, would not see what a beauty grew up and how she resembled her mother. In desperation, he was ready to take his daughter, to run with her to the ends of the earth, to hide and wander, just so that they would not be separated. Such thoughts came at night, when the longing became unbearable. But in the morning, he would come to his senses. He did not want such a life for his daughter. Eugene's arrival was a breath of fresh air for Kevin. He's not alone, he has a brother. He needs a lot of support right now. Brother's all grown up, married. He manages to survive with his mom. "Eugene, your mom hasn't bitten your wife yet." "Yeah, they're bonding." Ninel follows her mom around. "I'm afraid I'm gonna be redundant soon." "That's strange. She doesn't give her mom a damn, but she needs admirers. Apparently, you and I didn't live up to her expectations. So now she's taken up with Ninel. She's going to make a new noblewoman out of her. Let them have their fun. Maybe they won't have time for me. She doesn't think of me at all. She remembers, longs, worries. I can see that. She forgave me long ago, but she'll never make the first move herself. It's out of line. But you know our mom. I think she's calmed down a bit. After you left, she wondered if her impeccable parenting system had gone soft. It's a weird family. I've noticed. We never talked. Mom used to say we pretended to listen, like we were living in different worlds. We had our own truths. That's the problem. Talking to each other is not one of Mom's rules. Kev, I'm gonna say this, but don't get all up in your face. Think about it and weigh it. My husband and I are adopting Molly. Then she'll be in a less than perfect family, but still a family of her own. No, I'm not giving Molly away. I mean, who would doubt it? But I'd rather do that than lose the baby altogether. I fit the bill. A job, a family, a place to live. Plus, a relative wouldn't stand a chance with a good family. I know you're fighting for your daughter right now. But if it's a dead end, if I'm cornered, you know what, I'm ready. Think, decide, but don't take too long or we might not make it. Then the trouble came so often that there was no time to think. Molly Kevin hadn't been seen since the day she went into the hospital. Custody had taken a circular defense. The day of the hearing for the termination of parental rights had been set. The good family was already prepared, all the paperwork gathered. The nastiest part was that they came to visit, to have a heart-to-heart talk, to persuade her not to resist, to step aside. Holier than thou, slippery, tacky with glued on, and not real smiles. They began by sympathizing with Kevin. How hard it is alone with a kid full of worries and not enough money. This they could help with if Kev stayed out of the way. His financial situation will be much better. Straight money for you, the baby for us, and we parted ways. How I wanted to smear him with that smug frosting to make his smile slip. The masters of life buy babies. Why do they need Molly? Certainly not to make a little person happy. They want to be the perfect showy family with a baby, and having a baby is a hassle. Your figure will be ruined. Career stalls. Sleepless nights will not add happiness. It's better to get a ready-made one. For a favorable picture will go the main thing, and the day glamorous. You don't have to love it. You wouldn't dream of giving Molly to these people. The harder Kostya was driven into a corner, the more he thought about Genia's proposal. What if it was the only way out? He was still fighting for something, hoping. But he asked Eugene to collect the documents and apply for guardianship. Maybe the hour of X will come tomorrow. We have to be ready. Eugen, does Ninel mind? No, she's not a bad girl, decent, sincere. The trouble is, I don't love her, but I think she loves me. Though I'm not a specialist in feelings, I've never fallen in love. So for me, marriage to Ninel is the best option. Don't worry about Molly. She loves and wants kids. And how will Mom take her? Don't worry, I won't hurt her. No matter what kind of cockroaches are running around in her head. Mom won't allow herself to insult the child. At least we'll eat from her. Although I wouldn't want to. Our Iron Lady is an old lady. It's scary to leave her alone. Kostya has been restrained. Eugen immediately filed for custody of his niece Elizabeth. He told what happened when everything was already decided. What amazed Elizabeth the most was that the devoted Ninel, who seemed to have only one opinion. The opinion of her adored mother-in-law had remained silent for so long. How could it be? She had brought up her children in proper family traditions, in respect for parents, in submission and adoration. And within a couple years, it all came crashing down. First, Kevin brings in a questionable girl and goes against his mother's wishes. Now, Eugene takes Kevin's daughter into the family without regard for her opinion. A girl with a rotten heredity. No regard for her principles or values. Apparently not strict enough. Raised her with nothing, enough strength to fix it. She won't make the same mistakes with this girl. Elizabeth and sat in her throne chair. She had already made up her mind. All that remained was to bring her will to her rebellious sons. Kev and Eugene picked Molly up from the hospital and took her to the family nest. Kevin couldn't let her out of his arms. He missed her so much he cried. Molly grew up and began to make the first uncertain steps, but once cheerful and clear eyes settled fear. She only smiled at her daddy. She was wary of everyone else. Kevin and Eugene, have you acted unwisely? You first of all, Kevin. It was your actions that led to this unpleasant ending. It's a good thing you were smart enough to ask your family for help. Your hubris would have led to tragedy. What's done is done. You failed at being a father to a girl. It's Eugene's responsibility now. The girl needs to know who her parents are. So you, Kevin, have to accept that. You can come and talk to Maria, but only as an uncle. It's better to see less at first, so that the girl gets used to living with her parents. The secret of her birth must remain between us. I know it's hard for you to accept, but it's the right thing to do. Kevin himself realized that, giving Molly to his brother's family, he could not call himself her father, but he could not forget and would not stop loving her. It was heartbreaking, but it's better this way. At least he won't lose her forever. He would be able to watch her grow up. Eugen could physically feel his brother in pain. But the only thing he could do was swear that he would love Molly and do anything to make her happy. Kev, what are you going to do now? I'll go back to work, which is always a good place to go for long periods of time. I can't live here and not see my daughter. Then I'll have to go away at least for a while. They say you have to do something, love someone, and believe in something to be happy. Case I have the love of my life. He's sitting up. I believe we'll be together someday. I've got everything, but I'm as far from happiness as the moon. Kev was away, appearing once a year, and Elizabeth made sure that he did not allow himself to do anything unnecessary with Molly. An uncle who sometimes came to visit the family, nothing more. 3 years later, Eugene and Ninel had a baby. The son was named Charles in honor of the academic's grandfather. Deep down, Eugene was glad that it was not a daughter. Otherwise, there would have been an Elizabeth II in the family. Molly was terribly proud of her role as big sister. She liked the fact that she was considered an adult and trusted to look after her brother. When he got older, I took him for walks and kept saying, "I'm responsible for you." If something happens, what am I going to tell my mom? Eugene loved Molly dearly and remembered that he wasn't his own father. Only when Kev came to visit. Elizabeth raised her grandchildren strictly. In Charles, she saw musical ability. From 4 years, he studied with a music teacher, learned to play the violin. Even if there is no special talent, regular lessons are very disciplined. And with Molly was more difficult. Elizabeth could not see any talent in her. She was smart and studied well, but she had no talent. Elizabeth wrote it all off to bad heredity, as if forgot that in the granddaughter flows in her blood. The appearance of grandchildren brought Elizabeth back to the times of former power. It was a chance to right the wrongs of her upbringing. The grandchildren would not repeat the fate of her sons. She monitored their daily routines, what they did, what they read, who they were friends with. The obligatory family lunches and dinners were back. Everything was going the way Elizabeth had once dreamed it would. Clear, steady, right. She was so engrossed in building an ideal family that she did not immediately notice that Eugene's health was not all right. He was sluggish, complaining of headaches. One night at dinner, he turned pale and fainted. The doctors gave him a verdict: a brain tumor. Started from the hospital, all radiation, chemotherapy. 6 months later, Eugene came home. Black and ugly, but alive. There was hope that it was all over. It wasn't, and they fervently believed it was. They tried not to think of any other outcome. Eugene came to his senses, lived a normal life, went to work, played with his children. Never complained about anything. And suddenly he relapsed. The oncologist doctor over the years, who was not used to talking to relatives, quietly and tiredly said chemo will not help anymore. Only surgery. But you understand, the result is unpredictable. I'll tell you right away that without surgery he has 2 months left, and they will be terrible months. The surgery, if he survives, will give him 5 years to live. But what kind of life? I can't tell you. I don't know, doctor. Is there any clinic abroad? Someone who specializes in such operations? I wouldn't recommend it. You'll waste your time. And the level of our surgeons is no worse. If they can't do it, no one can. Think about it. But I'll tell you that the operation is at least a chance. It's a very slim one. What do you think you're gonna do? Doom a loved one to a slow, agonizing death? Or take a risk in the hope for the best, and in the end push him to instant death? Eugene cleared my doubts. I'll have the surgery. What do I have to lose? A couple of months of life in which I probably won't even recognize you. I realize there's little hope, but I'll take my chances. Who doesn't take risks? The one who doesn't bring champagne. I have the right. After the surgery, Eugene didn't regain consciousness, slipped into a coma. Relatives were allowed into the ICU unimpeded. Every day could have been his last. Molly, who was already 10 years old after school, went straight to the hospital and sat by her dad's side until the evening, when her mom replaced her. Molly heard adults talking about Daddy dying. It was explained to her that he had fallen asleep and now he couldn't wake up. How could he have fallen asleep? That he couldn't be patient and stay awake. If she was dying, would force herself to stay awake, then she wouldn't die. Sitting in the ICU by her father's bedside. She'd been trying to wake him up all day, but it wouldn't work. Daddy, wake up, please. Molly wiped her tears, and they just kept flowing. Before, when she cried, Daddy would come running, start comforting her and kissing her. Now she just lies there and doesn't even wake up. Chuck found this song, says it's some kind of healing song that wakes everybody up. He wants you to listen to it. Daddy, I'll play you anything you want. I'll sing it myself. Just don't die. Molly, it was scary. Why doesn't he wake up? Can't he hear her? Molly tried not to cry. You have to be strong. Daddy will wake up. She'll have to help him. She tried to cry, to keep her sobs down. She sobbed harder and harder, and she couldn't hold back her voice. Daddy, just don't die. You don't want to wake up, don't. Just live. Don't leave me. I feel bad without you. Chuck misses me. Cries often don't die. Don't leave us. Daddy, sweetie, tell me you won't die. Molly sobbed, kissed her father, held his hand. But all in vain. He was silent. It was very scary. Something incomprehensible, impossible was happening. He can't die. There would be no daddy, no one. They're all together. You can't live without him. The nurses at the post were talking. We have to get the car out of there. Look, she's hysterical. She won't leave. She'll stay here until her mother comes tonight. But you can't do that. She's having a nervous breakdown, crying. How long should I give her a sedative? But the baby doesn't need it. I'll go and try to calm her down. It's a pity about a man so young and probably a good man. Bad kids don't cry like that. The nurse tried to take Molly away. She wouldn't go, wouldn't let go of her father's hand. Molly, come on. I've got juice. Do you like orange juice? Let's go. Let Daddy sleep. Molly left the room. Molly, you go home. If Daddy wakes up, I'll call you. I'm not going anywhere. I'll stay here. I promise. Here, have a drink. Wipe your tears. Go home, your brother's waiting for you there. He's still a baby, he needs you. Molly left the hospital, but did not go home. She sat on a bench in the hospital square. She thought that if she left, Daddy would feel that he was alone and would think that he had been abandoned. She should sit here and wait for her mother. A woman walked slowly down the alley. Molly looked at her, could not take her eyes off her, though she knew it was not proper to look at strangers. But the woman was very strange and beautiful. She wore a long, wide, flying dress, big earrings, a lot of large shiny bracelets and rings, and a hat. No, it's not a hat. It's a handkerchief tied nicely. The woman walked past Molly. Suddenly she stopped, turned around and looked at her carefully. Her gaze was frozen, as if looking not at Molly, but through her. It was uncomfortable, like a cold feeling. Molly was like the Snow Queen, even though she wasn't in white. A woman came and sat down next to me. And a hand. Molly held out her hand. The woman put her hand in her palm, covered it with her other palm, closed her eyes. Molly felt warm, then cold, then warm again. It was strange, but not scary. The woman opened her eyes and released Molly's hand. You will be back. It will be painful and hard, but he will come back. Do you have a secret? You don't know the most important thing about yourself. You won't know it for a while. It's the Queen's secret. Will you be forced to make a decision? Take your time. There's a lot of lies around. I see two men beside me. One big, one small. They'll save you. Don't let anyone control your destiny. They can't see your path. I only know what's in the past. Don't take for granted what you see. You're drawn to someone who isn't sincere lying to you. It takes a while to see the right person. You probably don't know what I'm talking about right now. But remember my words, the man who's in the hospital now loves you very much. The sadness about him will always be with you. The woman stood up, stroked Molly's head and laughed. Who was that woman? A fortune teller. A fairy magician. A fairy, I guess. Fairies are often good fairies in fairy tales. Maybe Molly has her own fairy, like in a fairy tale. Maybe she'll help Daddy too. Maybe she'll perform a miracle and make Daddy well. Molly didn't cry anymore. It was getting easier. She decided she should go home. Chuck was waiting there. The miracle didn't happen. Eugene died without regaining consciousness in the cemetery. Molly stood by her father's grave and whispered quietly, "Where are you, fairy? You said he'd come back, but he's dead. I don't believe you anymore." Standing next to her was Uncle Kev holding her hand. He looked so much like Daddy that Molly hugged him tightly. That way she felt like Daddy was close by. Kevin cradled the crying girl and her heart broke with pity for her brother, and for herself. Why was fate so unfair? First his beloved left him and now his brother. And to the only dear person he cannot tell the truth. Elizabeth took a long time to come to her senses after her son's death. Ninel grieved no less, but thought it was her duty to support her mother-in-law, but she herself cried. Then Elizabeth's world was crumbling. One son left, the second died. At least she had grandchildren. From that moment on, she stopped thinking of Molly only as a troubled girl who needed an eye. Yeah, an eye. Suddenly she realized she was her own little person, an extension of her. Life flowed on. As the children grew up, the older they got, the stronger their bond. They were as one. No quarrels, no hard feelings, no secrets. Charles practiced music. Grandma personally supervised the lessons. Molly enrolled in the Institute of Philology at the Pedagogical Institute, a fine choice for a girl from a decent family. She finished a service course, although her grandmother thought that it was completely unsuitable for an intelligent girl. When she even had a friend, whom Elizabeth favorably approved and allowed to bring into the house. Although Emily was from a simple family, even to Molly's eyes, a little impulsive. That's if you speak the language of their family, and a simpler frenemy. What's on her mind is on her tongue. They say they're the kind of people who don't have a king in their heads. Grandma must have decided that Molly needed to be close to the people. And Molly's welcome. She finally has a friend, and one who's genuinely interesting and direct. By this time, Kev had moved to the department, stopped traveling on expeditions, finally married. Elizabeth did not interfere, but she did not nubis his wife. She didn't invite him in. Kev went to his mother's house often. He wanted to be close to his daughter, to know what she was doing, who she was seeing. When he once stammered that he should tell Molly the truth, Elizabeth cut him off. Kevin, you don't dare say anything. You made your choice a long time ago. Emily came running in. Elizabeth opened the door. Victoria, what's wrong? Is someone chasing you? Why are you so disheveled? Elizabeth, I'm in trouble. Look, she held her hands out in front of her. Her fingers were perfectly manicured, but one nail. Oh my gosh, it was broken. If Molly doesn't help, I'm screwed. Of course, how could anyone survive? Come on in, Molly, catastrophe. Help me, even if you can't. And I can't do anything about it. We need to call the emergency services. Molly turned on the gel dryer and started asking what happened to her friend, that a broken nail could ruin her fate. A stormy romance with Jacob from the physics department discussed the entire institute. With interest, watched the development of events. Jacob from the dorm moved in with Emily. So what happened? Molly, you tell me. Men have different brains. Why is it that when things are good, they don't live, they need adrenaline stress? Well, I can't advise you on that. I have two men in my life, Uncle Kev and Charles. Who do you want to ask? I put my whole self on a platter for him, and he did. Emily shoved a three-finger shape under Molly's nose. Like a bastard. I'm gonna put him out tonight. I have to be impossibly beautiful. So the bastard realizes who he's losing. Vic, that's unbelievable. Making a guy look good to make him look good. Only you can do that. You shouldn't have gone into teaching. You should be an actress. Is that a good idea? Emily's gone to a whisper. I don't know how you live in this palace. Your grandmother gave me the creeps. And don't try, you wouldn't understand. I haven't really gotten it myself in years. I hope it's not forever. Oh my. They won't let you out of that cage. Your grandmother hasn't found a suitable fiancé for you yet. You're going from one cage to another. I wonder when they'll marry her off. They'll ask you. It was under the influence of Emily that Molly decided that she needed a little independence and told her grandmother that she wanted to get a job. Elizabeth had nothing to object. She wants to work, not to have fun. But you can't let the girl go anywhere. She needs supervision. Kevin, take the girl in. Let me have any vacancies. Mom, who am I going to take her in? We're a research institute. She doesn't have a proper education. I can't send her on an expedition as a cook, unless she's a lab technician. But that sounds nice, but in reality she's cleaning test tubes and floors. Basically, a cleaning lady. Uncle Kev, I agree. Molly, have you been listening to what's going on? Charles, and why do you have another 20 minutes to study here? Did Molly and Chuck laugh and run away? No, but look at them with a smile, Elizabeth said. The parrots have mated and are inseparable. All right, let him work. Just keep an eye on it. Molly was very nervous on her first day on the job. What if she couldn't do it? She tried her best. It's not a difficult job, but test tubes are so fragile. When the test tube slipped out of her hands and shattered on the floor, Molly froze. All failed. Let down, Uncle Kostya would be fired. A handsome young man approached her. Molly, don't be upset. We've overpaid so much here, you can't count it. My name is Benjamin. I'm the biggest boss here. Come on, I'll buy you a coffee. Benjamin took Molly by the arm and led her to the exit. One of the girls in the lab gave them a jealous look. turned off the equipment, and followed. Benjamin brought Molly coffee, sat down next to her, and playing, and not perhaps with beautiful eyes, began to say that he now takes on her patronage. He would teach her everything. He would not let anyone offend him. Molly looked at him and realized everything was gone. She had never seen such a handsome man in her life. Then the door opened and the girl came in and said, "Benjamin, Kevin Marksman is looking for you. If I'm not mistaken, this is your uncle." "Yes, Molly." Benjamin quickly retreated, and the girl sighed heavily, sat down in the chair, and said, "Molly, I see, Benjamin. You've got your head screwed on. Don't believe him. He's a notorious womanizer. It's been a tragedy around here. Everybody falls in love with him, and I'm no exception. But the trouble is, he's married, and every time he gets a new girlfriend, he promises he'll divorce her. Don't believe it. He won't get divorced, and his wife will cut anyone's throat. But she won't let her husband go. He's the one who's handsome, talented, independent, and his wife is afraid of fire. How he manages to hide his affairs, I don't understand. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he and his wife have a pact to go out as much as you want, but don't touch the family." Now Molly tried to avoid Benjamin, but he wasn't used to giving up. She waited outside work with flowers and offered him a ride, invited him to the movies. Molly refused, but his insistence was mistaken for a show of affection. Can it not be that he fell in love with her? Divorce his wife and marry her? Grandmother's prohibitions on relations with married men are almost forgotten. It's the others he's been fooling around with. But with her, it'll be for real. Luckily, Benjamin's estranged mistresses had figured out how to tell Kevin. Either they felt sorry for the girl or they were looking out for themselves. The scandal was terrible. Elizabeth demanded that Molly quit immediately. Molly cried and assured that Benjamin is a wonderful man, just unhappy in the family. Kevin felt guilty. Emily wondered, "Molly, are you crazy? He's a married man. He'll never get divorced. He'll sing to you about love and divorce for years. You're like out of the wild woods in life in general, not in the sense of overdoing it. Your grandmother went through with the restraining order. Is that what it means to keep a girl in a black body? She sees a man, she hears compliments, and she swims." Elizabeth was convinced she had to take matters into her own hands, or else she'd be in trouble. She got Molly a job as an editorial assistant at a publishing house. No way. And philology? Molly loved her job. It is clear that she was not trusted with top authors, but it was more interesting to proofread texts than to wash test tubes. There were talented people among aspiring writers. Molly was happy that her opinion promoted them to success. On the way home, she stopped by the store. Grandma wrote a whole list, walked down the rows, threw in the basket of products. "I think that's it." No, Grandma's sauce is still needed. The sauces were in a separate rack. Molly picked up a jar, and then some man ran into her. The jar fell out of her hands and shattered. "Can't you see where you're going?" "I'm sorry, I'm crying, but it's your own fault. Standing in the aisle." "Yeah, you're the kind of guy who buys everything. Too bad you can't buy good manners." "Listen, ladies with manners. I said I'm paying." Molly brushed off one Hocklea and then collapsed the whole rack with. Mustache. They stood in multicolored splashes, and rainbow streams spilled across the floor. The store employees were already walking toward them. A man was trying to shake off the sauce drops from his coat. The smearing only made it worse. Molly, for some reason, became terribly angry at this well-dressed man with a confused face. From anger, she threw the basket on the floor right into the mess of glass and sauces. Neurotic. I don't envy your husband. You wanted to pay, so pay up. Molly walked out of the store. Tears welled up in her eyes. She was hurt, but she didn't understand why she wasn't the one who was hurt. It was the first time in her life she'd ever been insulted. She'd run away apologizing. It was her own fault. She knocked over the counter and acted hysterical. "It's a shame about the coat, but I guess I'll have to throw it away." Now Molly cried not because of the coat, but because she's so ridiculously right. Emily is completely unfit for life. "I'm sorry, you forgot the groceries." The store mates handed her a bag of groceries. "Oh, what are you doing?" "You'll forgive me. I don't usually behave like this. I got something else and ruined your coat." That's what I mean. How do you get home like that? I have a suggestion. There's an instant dry cleaner over there. Not exactly instant, but they can do it in an hour and a half. We'll have coffee. There's a little cafe there for those poor souls. It wasn't really a cafe. It's just a room with 2 tables. But there's coffee of different kinds and a window with beautiful, even tasty cakes. Let's go in there now and finally meet them. My name is Leo. It's a fancy name, but that's what it is. You know I have Kevin and Charles in my family. Leo doesn't look very flashy to them. I'm Molly, but Molly's better. An hour and a half passed quickly over coffee and conversation. Turns out they both work at Prima Publishing. However, Molly did not quite understand what Leo was doing, something on the economic side. The fact that they had never met at the publishing house. Not surprisingly, the administration. The publishing house itself is a printing house. They're all at different ends and the entrances are separate. And Molly was rarely in the newsroom except to pick up or publish work. Molly, I'll text you my phone number if you ever want to vent, yell at someone. Call me. I'm kind of used to it, but God forbid you need help. All the more reason. Elizabeth was determined to find Molly a suitable match before she got into trouble again. She invited a friend of hers and her son to dinner. Peter was in every way a worthy candidate. His grandfather was a friend of the academic marksman. Peter's mother told her what a wonderful son she had. He got a great education, built his own business. Didn't specify which one though, did she? Peter's behavior was impeccable. He was attentive, made it clear he cared about Molly. And Molly was embarrassed by his hard, appraising gaze. Elizabeth wasn't silent either. He praised his granddaughter. Chuck leaned over to his sister and whispered in her ear, I think you're being wooed. I think they've already agreed on everything. Do you think they'll ask you? He's kind of slippery. How about Molly? Charles, is it inappropriate to whisper at the table? It's inappropriate. But it's proper to make remarks to your grandchildren in front of strangers. It's proper to have a viewing without informing the prospective bride. It's proper to praise your offspring like pedigree puppies. It's proper. Well, Grandma, I'm sorry, but Charles has somehow decided that you, Peter, are here to review the bride. At the price of getting out, so to speak. So he's asking why I didn't tell Grandma I had a fiancé. We've already applied. Grandma, I'm sorry. I should have told you a long time ago, but I kept dragging it out. Now it's so embarrassing. I'm ashamed I put you in such a ridiculous position. Elizabeth was stunned. What to say? There was a familiar look of disappointment on her face. Peter, on the other hand, seemed to be enjoying the situation. He could barely contain his laughter. Well done, girl. Found a family girl, got the old ones from his nice. Molly, but you're not married yet. Then I have a chance. I'm still fighting. When the guests left, Elizabeth gave her grandchildren a stern interrogation. What fiancé? Where did he come from? No wedding is out of the question. Charles, you knew and you kept quiet. Who else knows? Maybe Kevin knew too. No, Grandma. Uncle Kev doesn't know anything. I didn't share it with anyone but Chuck, she winked. Chuck, all right, next Friday, bring your fiancé to lunch. We'll get to know each other. That's quite a number. Where would I get it? Till Friday. Chuck's no help. You could say he's not coming. They had a fight. Then Peter will probably show up again. Or maybe someone else. The day before the fateful lunch, Molly called Leo. Leo, you said I could call if I needed help. I need help now. Could you pretend to be my fiancé for one day? I can take it from here. Molly was telling the backstory and thinking how ridiculous it all sounded. What am I doing? He's gonna say no. What do I do then? She'll probably say no. Why would he want to be a part of this spectacle? Leo laughed, called her crazy, but agreed. Only I ask you, do everything you can to displease my grandmother. She will forbid me to meet you and bring you into the house. And if she does, how will I explain where you've gone? I can do that. I'll be so nasty, you'll kick me out of the house. You'll make your grandmother happy. But if I'm the groom, I don't want to be called by my first name. Don't watch the bride's confession. I'll be there tomorrow in all my glory. Molly, I've regretted 100 times what I did with this whole venture. But there's no turning back. Grandma's already put the pie test in. There was a full house at the Marksman apartment on Friday. Even Ninel's parents invited her. Elizabeth was afraid that her granddaughter wouldn't be able to talk sense into her alone. She hadn't seen the groom yet, but she was sure that Molly would bring a completely unacceptable specimen. Kev was no less worried. The groom's daughter would bring her daughter. Kevin's wife thought nothing of Molly or the groom. It was the first time she'd been invited to her mother-in-law's house in years. She was afraid of the wrong look, the wrong thing to say. Her husband had never told her the reason for this strange relationship with his family, and she hadn't asked. They were waiting for the fiancé to show up out of nowhere. When the doorbell rang and Molly opened it, she didn't realize it was Leo. She looked stunning black leather jacket all in rivets, their plaid pants, massive boots on one hand, leather bracelets on the other, some red cloth in polka dots. On her head, she's got an earring in her ear, either a punk or a rocker, 3 roses in her hand, not fresh. Oh hey, put the flowers in water, they're getting a little dull. Wow, how many are there? Yeah, if I'd known you had so many more flowers, I would have brought them. I'm a pilot. Leo, come in complete silence. Leo went into the room, looked around. He sat down at the table and rubbed his hands together. Wow, it's smoky in here, isn't it? Elizabeth took a breath and tried to remedy the situation. Well, welcome to the table. Really, what are you standing around for? Sit down, let's have a drink. Leo poured a shot glass, drank, had a snack, poured again. Everyone sat in silence, not drinking, not eating, watching. Listen, why are you so boring? Such a sumptuous table, and you don't eat. You don't want to. Then let's talk. What do you usually talk about at the table? It's a topic. Molly hugged Elizabeth by the shoulders. Shivered at this opinion and at the boorish behavior just over the edge. Charles, with a red face, supported by laughter, said, I know the phone number. We talk about music. Leo took a drink. That's right, about the music. Have you heard the band Boiled Nightingale? What kind of songs? Well, for example, Leo pulled in Your Beautiful Skull and Huge Eye Sockets. What lyrics don't you like? Elizabeth stood up and barely delayed pronounced the young man. Do you have to go? How could I? We haven't talked about literature yet. Here Molly decided that yes, it's time or Grandma will have a stroke. She grabbed Leo by the arm and dragged him to the door. Charles followed. Molly, where'd you find such an asshole? But that's it. I'm gonna ask you. I'm not such a jerk. By the way, young man, kudos to you. You handled yourself very well. All right, go on. You got a grandmother to bring to your senses. It wasn't just Grandma who needed to be brought to her senses. Everyone was in shock. Only Kevin seemed to realize what Molly was up to and marveled at her courage. She had dared to confront her grandmother. Elizabeth was lying on the sofa. Ninel was busy around her. Molly, come to me. How could you bring a marginalized man into the house? Decent girls don't go near such personalities. They avoid them. Aren't you ashamed? No, I'm not ashamed. I can't control my heart. And I come to keep him out of our house. I dug him up somewhere. He works at our publishing house. My God, where is the world going? In publishing, among writers and intelligent and talented people, it's so lame. Molly, you can't go out with him. It'll be too late for you to understand. I care about you. Grandma, I think caring and controlling are different things. What if this is my destiny? A life-changing encounter. But it will be life-changing, that's for sure. Molly's no dumber. You can't be happy with pilots like that. But it made my grandmother angry. What's next? Now they'll clamp them in a vise. They won't let them die. Grandma and Mom will organize total control. I've let the porridge down too. He'll get some too. Elizabeth didn't sleep well last night. She wondered where the world was going. The Research Institute is full of cables who don't care which skirt to drag in the publishing house, who have no idea of decency, marginalized, inheritance hunters in such solid institutions, such unpleasant personalities. And that's exactly what Molly is attracted to. How to keep her granddaughter away from all this nastiness. The nunnery didn't come together. And for some reason she's not interested in worthy candidates. In the morning, a messenger brought a huge bouquet of white roses. Inside was a note from Peter. Wow, he really decided not to give up. Grandma, besides being the son of your acquaintances, do you know anything about him? What does he do? Whatever he does is better than your pilot. He's asking her out. Well, go find out for yourself. No, Grandma, I can't. I'm going out with Leo tonight. Oh no, Leo, you're not going out with Leo. Elizabeth did not know the pilot's last name, but rightly reasoned that Leo in the publishing house a little. Decided to go and demand that he keep her granddaughter. Did not count on a favorable party. Leo Barkowski, the director of the technical department of the publishing house, was standing in the foyer at the receptionist's desk when he noticed Elizabeth coming through the door. Helen, you see that old woman over there. She's about to come over and demand Leo. Hold her a little bit, pretend you're calling for Leo, not the director, but some Leo locksmith. And for God's sake, don't be surprised by anything. Leo disappeared around the corner. Elizabeth looked immaculate. Hair, makeup, light-colored coat, gloves, and a handbag from a famous manufacturer. Stylish and expensive. She's in her 70s. She looks chic. Walked up to the counter and with the look of a queen, from below walked to the mortals. Turned to Helen, honey. I'm looking for a young man named Leo. Leo works here, and this must be Helen from the technical department. I'll call you right now. Helen is the 5th button on the phone. I sent Leo to you. It's still okay. They'll fix it later. It's not leaking now. Send him here to him. She hung up the phone and turned to the visitor. You sit him down from the print shop for 5 minutes. Elizabeth sat on the sofa with interest and looked interior. In the foyer is beautiful, light trees, skating rinks, comfortable furniture. One could see that the publishing house was thriving, only that they do not take care of their reputation. How can they hire a type like a pilot? You can't afford to lose your image with a guy like that. Leo came out of the print shop into the foyer. Helen's eyes almost fell out that it's work overalls, jacket on top, all covered in some kind of dark oil stains. Wherever he found it, from beneath the cap protruded a disheveled, mean, cloudy look and a persistent odor of alcohol. Wow, how in 5 minutes you could turn from an intelligent, respectable director into a Western plumber. When will you, my sunshine, agree to go on a date with me? Leo handed Helen a caramel. With a ringing smack on her hand and staggered turned around. Who needs me around here? There's a chimney breathing down there. Helen couldn't even say anything, only waved her head there, saying, Oh, Grandma, what are you doing here? Leo approached Elizabeth with a firm step, even tried to kiss her hand. She squeamishly pulled her hand away. What kind of grandmother am I to you? Don't come near me. You stink of booze. I'm going to quit drinking. I'll marry her and give it up. I understand, I'm not right for you, but we're in love. Don't worry, I'm not going to live with you. I have an apartment and a good salary. I'm appreciated here. Helen, tell me I'm appreciated here. Well, of course, Helen, we are appreciated. Stop clowning around. Are you hoping for an inheritance for nothing? Yes, I have the means and the apartment. But Molly is just a granddaughter. My son will inherit everything. Or do you hope to outlive us all? And don't talk to me about love. I get the distinct impression this is all a farce. Molly, I wouldn't go near someone like you. What do you play at? Talented, by the way. You are not to be anywhere near our family. Don't you dare go near my granddaughter, and she's not going on any date tonight. I won't let her. Dates? Oh yeah, that I'm forgetting. I agree, there will be no date. I'm not feeling so good tonight. That woman, I got goosebumps. A general in a skirt. She's got the whole family in her fist. I can see why Molly's freaking out. Leo didn't like the situation he and Molly had gotten themselves into. How to get out of it now? He wanted to court Molly, to ask her out on dates, to walk around the city at night, to have heart-to-heart talks. But how do you do that now? Grandma won't let Molly anywhere near her. She'll be right. You can't let a guy like that near your granddaughter. And to come and say, look, I'm so white and fluffy. They wouldn't believe it. Peter insisted on a date, sent flowers, waited outside the institute. Molly did not understand why he was suddenly. A burst of love. Didn't believe it. Also, grandmother is pushing. Take a closer look. Nice guy. Emily's putting oil on it too. Get out of the house while Grandma lets you. You're not getting married. What's not to do? Molly couldn't explain why she had a problem with Peter. Young, handsome, wealthy. Molly wasn't really interested in what he did for a living. Walk in the park, go to the theater, and chat over a cup of tea, please. And Molly was not going to interfere in his life. You don't have to. It's not interesting. She was interested in Leo, but she hadn't seen him since his spectacular appearance at their house. Now, when she came to the publishing house, she looked at every man she passed. But Leo had not been asked about him. She was shy. She couldn't find a reason to call. And he didn't call. Charles saw his sister worrying, waiting for a call. Guessed who it was from, and he laughed at her. I don't see your prince. I guess he didn't like us. We're boring. We're not up to his level. You should try harder. What's on your head? It's boring. And your closet sucks. You should at least go to a Dead Nightingale concert. You have to share your lover's interest. Dead and boiled Lorianova are two big differences, of course. By the way, when you get tired of Peter, you can take him to this concert too. You'll get two birds with one stone and get rid of Peter the bore. Chuck, shut up, of course. I'm just being brotherly. Shut up. Why are you in agony? Would you take it? Yes, I did. And if you let her know you're not your type. But Mona isn't and is. Molly thought it had been a while since she'd had a heart-to-heart with Emily. We used to talk about stuff for hours. And now there's something to talk about. And my friend's missing. What if something happened to her? Or she's having an amazing affair? She's not Molly's type. Emily wasn't answering her cell phone for some reason. She wasn't home either. But that's not surprising at all. Emily's never been home. That's another thing that's troubling. A neighbor said she hadn't seen her in 3 days. Before that, she heard her arguing with her boyfriend. I've got her mom's phone number from when she lived here. Maybe she hasn't changed it. Look it up. Emily had not changed her phone number, and luckily for her, Emily was at her place. Damn it. What a scare. It turned out that Emily herself was much more frightened. She came disheveled, halted with black eyes, as if she hadn't slept at her parents' for a week. She was hiding from an admirer. That is, she was the one who initially thought he was an admirer, and he turned out to be a fraud and a moral freak. They met on the internet. Emily, you've never been told you can't meet people online. I've gotten assholes on both networks. So I thought I'd give it a try. Maybe I'll get lucky. And I did. Young, handsome, courteous. I even started making plans. On the first date, Emily realized that Nick was her destiny, the way he looked at her, the way he talked. More flowers, gifts. Every day he meets and sees me off, he makes plans. He's got a small service, just a few locksmiths. But now he's opening another one. Soon he will earn 3 times more money enough for a wedding and a wedding trip. Molly, that's the difference between a woman and a man. You know, we've been planning a wedding since childhood, playing dolls, dressing them up in white dresses, clinging to the head of the veil. Who are our proper brides? And next to them is the doll, the boy groom. And then we paint them a beautiful life, until they die on the same day. So the wedding is a childhood dream, and childhood dreams must come true. I don't know if it's just me or if I'm the only one who's stupid, but I've dreamed of getting married since I was a kid. I've seen it all. I've seen the tears and the divorces, but I believe in the fairy tale. I've been on every diet, even the stupidest ones. And why? To be liked? Men. They don't care. They shave and they're fine, or they don't. Nick shaved and washed and wooed, and talked about getting married. I never had a chance not to fall in love. Nick's business was going well. He was a little short of money for a second workshop. Naturally, Emily gave him all her savings. How could she? It was for their happiness. Emily was no fool. I've heard of marriage scammers, but not Nick. They applied to the registry office and decided where they would live. Nick has a studio apartment. So does Emily. So we have to sell both and buy a bigger apartment. It would be good to do it before the wedding, so they could move into the new apartment right away. Emily's apartment was quickly found. The deal was done in 2 days. And just then, Emily hesitated a little too quickly. No, she's not against the sale, but maybe after the wedding. At first, Nick was sweet-talking, then he took offense. How you don't trust me? With a reasonable question why only her apartment is sold on his. What? There are no buyers. Nick got angry. Some are all his intelligence and restraint, good manners, and most importantly, where all the love suddenly evaporated. He yelled, he insulted, he threatened. I don't understand what you want. You want to get married? So I was ready. But you're a chicken and you ruined everything. Somebody needs somebody and you think you're somebody else. You think someone's gonna marry you out of love. Don't be fooled. There was hatred in his eyes. He yelled in her face, insults, uncontrollable anger spewed in the most obscene terms. Jammed Emily into a corner, and with all his might Shibanova fist against the wall. And next to her head a portrait of Emily, painted by an artist on the waterfront. Collapsed to the floor, shards of glass flying around. Nick picked up a shard, put it to Emily's neck. You're gonna come in and sign the sales contract, and if you don't, I'll kill you in this apartment. Don't you dare run away. I'll find you everywhere. Emily was afraid that could kill her. She didn't wait for the rest of the story. And as soon as the door closed behind Nikolai, she left her things in a bag and went to her parents. The endless calls started. First, I didn't pick up the phone, then I just threw away the SNM card. Now I didn't know what to do next. I'm scared to go back to the apartment, Molly. You tell me what's wrong with me. Why do all the freaks come at me so many times? I'm not stepping on the rake again. I walk on them. Emily could go to the police. My neighbor's a cop. He beat me. He didn't beat me. Took away the apartment, did not have time. I lent money against a receipt. No, I said it. I gave it back. What are you going to go with? Emily cried quietly. Molly felt so sorry for her. Why is she such a naughty girl? Life had taught her nothing. There was no way to comfort her. This time it wasn't just a failed romance and a broken heart. Emily, aren't you exaggerating? I didn't. I just wanted to make a profit at your expense. He's not a villain. He's not gonna come after you. You're not gonna get anything now. He's probably found another victim by now. He's not interested in you. Maybe so, but it's still scary, Emily sighed sadly. I told you about it, it seems to be easier, and I was sitting alone. I was digesting it all. Elizabeth came into the room, Molly and Peter came in. Well, I'm really not in the mood for him. Okay, I'm coming. Elegant and gallant as always, with bouquets for Molly Elizabeth. Peter nodded to Grandma. I wonder why he didn't bring bouquets for Mom. I could see that Neno's opinion doesn't count here. He bet on Grandma. Hello, Peter. I'm sorry, but I can't go out tonight. I have a friend visiting. It's okay to meet a friend next time. Sure, come on in. Victoria, this is Peter, an acquaintance of mine. Something strange flashed in their eyes, like surprise or wariness. Like she'd seen Peter before, but couldn't remember where. I dream of moving into the category of fiancés, but so far to no avail. I'll leave you to it. Molly, I'll come back tomorrow. Peter went out. I could hear him talking to his grandmother. They were joking and laughing about something. Finally, the door slams. That's Grandma's protege, I take it. What's wrong with that? He's serious, thorough, and attractive. Grandma likes him. You know who Hippolyta reminds me of? Do you happen to have Lukashin in mind? No. Emily doesn't talk dirty. I thought you knew Peter. No, I don't. But I did. Emily's parents had an old cottage, inherited from their parents. A cottage, built in the 70s, modest, no amenities, paid for. As a child, Emily hated this country house. They took her there for the whole weekend to plow the garden, but it was terribly boring. Let's go to the river. No tomatoes, we'll go to the woods, my daughter, and the strawberries won't hurt. From boredom, she mastered a shelash, and in the thickets of cherry trees, dragged there all the neighborhood cats. And she was friends with the neighbor girl, who was very small. She said she didn't know how to do anything. The grown apple and pear trees gradually turned the vegetable garden into a garden. Mom was in the habit of planting a few beds in the spring, and the rest of the plot was filled with flowers. Emily was also fond of it. She ordered seedlings and bulbs of the most unusual varieties and colors. The house was once again patched up, or a veranda was added. Tiled attic was converted into a small room is not dark and cramped, but a separate room. Now Emily adored the country house. She loved to get away from the city for a couple of days in silence and beauty. For the last 6 months her mother, coming from the country house, every time told about some young men who are relentlessly snooping around the village and offer to sell plots to everyone. There were rumors that cottages would be built on the site of the cottage village. Most likely not rumors. The place is too enviable. From the city to go 30 minutes. There's a forest and a river nearby. Dacha dwellers are worried. Their old houses didn't look like mansions. Well-to-do people preferred more prestigious settlements. They had worked for so many years on their small plots, creating smart gardens. These small pieces of land were an outlet in their lives, gave a break from the endless from morning to evening work. Dacha cares did not seem like work. It was a vacation, a chance to catch their breath, an illusion of freedom. They were not ready to part with their dachas. But the young, persistent realtors did not give rest. Apparently, time was running out. Some people agreed. Dozens of dachas had already been sold. Such a cozy and blooming settlement covered the numbers of protected plots with a plaque. Emily's parents were very worried about how one could live without a country house. After the work week to sit in an apartment on 6 floors of a huge house, in the stuffiness and darkness for the money that they were offered to buy a country house in another neighborhood, will not work. The developer could count money for a small plot, and a house ruined the school, offered a modest sum. When Emily was at the dacha with her parents, again brazen young men showed up. The owners are not thinking of selling. No, we will not sell the country house. No, come here. 2 houses away from you, 3 lots have been sold. Demolition will start soon, then construction. You want to live in constant mud and hunting. Your life of peace and freshness is over. You know, construction is a dangerous business. Things can fall down, catch fire. Are you willing to risk it? You're threatening us. We're warning you of the possible consequences. God forbid. And you'll be left without a country house and without money. That's when Emily saw Peter. He was one of those young men. Molly, you see, he's not a businessman. He's not even a developer, he's just an errand boy. I'm not judging him, he's just doing his job. But why pretend to be a big businessman? He doesn't have any business. He's marrying you to improve his financial situation. Nothing wrong with that, if he loves you. But I'm having second thoughts. So tell me, girlfriend, do you want to marry Peter? Or is there another prince on the horizon? That's right, there's no other prince on the horizon. Well, Molly ran to the publisher. It's such a tough author. She can't get the tedious clerical text right. She'd rewrite the whole thing. But the author thinks his work is genius and fights for every word. Molly has never complained about authors, but here she decided to find something offensive. In this form, you cannot give the text to the editor. I went over in my mind the arguments that would convince the editor to reject this author. Mentally talked through everything the editor might say. I whispered objections and convinced everything in myself without seeing or hearing anyone. I was late, running, not seeing where. Until in the foyer of the publishing house stuck in someone from the run-up, tried to go around, no way around. I looked up at Leo. God, I've been dreaming about this meeting for so long. I've thought of 100 things, what to say, and now he won't say a word. No words. Well, bride. Finally we meet. Hello, Leo. Wow, how official is that? I forgot we're on a first-name basis. Molly wanted to call so many times, but after my performance, it was awkward. How did I not overdo it? No, it was just right. Grandma was so impressed that she decided to keep getting to know me. She came here to explain to me how wrong I was and forbade me to go near you. Leo laughed. She didn't say anything to me. And you obeyed? What was left of my image? You won't go near your house. Then we'll have to fix it. We're gonna make Leo the pilot. Here, please, 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 please. Molly, I can count on a date, but only if Grandma approves. This weekend, Emily invited me to the country house for a relaxing weekend in the woods. It's been too stressful these past few days. I need to get my head on straight, and then we need to seize the moment. There's still a place to go. Clear day, I'm in a good mood. To hell with all the problems. We're on vacation. We talked ourselves into it, but everyone's soul was in a different state of melancholy. Emily couldn't recover from the horror of her experience with Nicholas. And Molly still hadn't heard from Leo. What's the cure for trauma? Good wine, good food, and small talk. But walking through the woods, almost fainting, we decided to make a romantic evening of it. Since we're not having any luck with men, we'll do without them. Molly wasn't much of a cook, but she was good at auxiliary work. Emily cooked pilaf according to all the rules in a cauldron over a fire. The smell was so strong that the neighbors were looking over the fence. They were invited, of course. The Moors in the village were rustic, all relatives, all their own. We sat up till evening. When it got dark, the neighbors left. Molly and Emily stayed behind. We sat alone on the veranda, so full that we didn't want to talk. I can't imagine that soon we won't have this country house. It's sickening. I come here when something happens, or when I'm tired and come here with flowers. I work and sit in the evening. Like now, I'll listen to the forest noise. And the trouble's gone. Don't sell it. They can't force you. But they can force you. But they can make you imagine they'll demolish everything and build cottages. And in the middle, we all slept from our hut. To keep out of the way, so far there are still a lot of people here. But what will happen next is the question. Everything in my life seems to be sticking together. I recently went to a fortune teller, my neighbor, all my ears buzzed. What an extraordinary she is. How she sees everything and knows everything. So she told me some nonsense. She said you'll live a long time. And fate won't happen, and fate won't happen. There's already a destiny. The other question is, what is it? I see a man in uniform next to you, she says. I've tried them all. There's no such man in military or police uniforms. Maybe a security guard or a newspaperman. Do you think that counts? Emily, don't bother with fortune tellers. They can't see shit. I had a fortune teller when I was a kid, said my dad wasn't gonna die. He did. She also told me there were 2 men who would save me. When? Why did she tell me about a secret I'd find out someday? Standard stuff. They all say the same thing to everyone. Somewhere they'll hit the mark with the same prediction. She guessed right, said I'd be with someone who wasn't sincere. That's right about Peter. On the other hand, who doesn't have people like that around them? You've got a whole bunch. Yeah, I'm a champ at this. It was very quiet in the village when the apple fell. A cat or a hedgehog walked through the grass. The windows of the houses are not lit. Everyone is asleep. Only the lanterns on the plots shine in the distance. There was the sound of a motor. The sound was getting closer. Someone was driving down the street. The light of the headlights slid across the lot. A car stopped at the gate. Emily, any more guests? What guests? Maybe Mom and Dad want to come over. Why would they be here at night? The gate opened. Someone was walking down the path. The streetlight was only a few meters away. When Emily jumped up, Molly, it's him. Who? Nick. Nick walked onto the porch. Oh, so you're not alone. Hello, girls. You were really hoping to get away from me. I told you I'd find you. Emily squirmed, flew into the back of the couch. Look at the terror in her eyes. Molly was terrified too. It frightened her to be so afraid of him. A common boar. Coming here is strange, of course, but he won't do anything to them. Young man, you weren't invited here, were you? You'd better leave. Nick turned sharply to Molly, approached her, squinted at her as if wondering who dared to open his mouth. Grabbed her by the neck and typed face first into the desk. I didn't come to see you. You're unlucky to be here, aren't you? And I warned you I can't be deceived. He let go of Molly's broken, face streaming blood in his ears hummed. Emily rushed out of the porch. Nick grabbed her arm and threw her back on the couch. Emily huffed, looking around. What to do? She screamed. There are people in the settlement, right? Maybe someone would hear. Nick jumped up to her, clamped his hand over her mouth, and said quietly, penetratingly, once more for screaming at her at once. I wanted to talk, to explain to you how wrong you are, to make you realize what you're dying for. I felt sorry for your girlfriend. She went out for company. Come on, let's get in the house or they'll catch you. Emily and Molly entered the house and bolted the door. Nick grinned. They closed the door with a kick. Running, he sat down at the table, poured the wine, moved the dishes. In short, it was a lucky break. At the same time, I had dinner and ate with appetite, imagining how those two frightened chickens were trying to find a way out. And there's no way out, nowhere to go. The girls were really trying to figure out what to do. A room with 2 sofa tables, a closet, a ladder to the attic, and a metal grass sadness in the corner. The only window overlooked the veranda, and Nick was there. Molly had a terrible headache. Emily pulled out pills, absorbent cotton and peroxide, wiped the blood off her friend's face. Molly, where's your phone? Mine's on the porch. Molly tried to remember. Emily prayed that the phone was here. Otherwise, they wouldn't have a chance. Molly remembered it was here, in the pocket of the Petrovka she had hung in the closet. They rushed to the closet. There is a phone beeping, but the charge is at 0. First on the list was Charles' cell phone. That's who Molly called. It rang. It seemed like an interminable amount of time. Finally, Charles picked up. Molly, did the phone go dead? No, it's not like that. I went to find a charger. But then Nick finished dinner and knocked on the door. Girls, open up. Emily pushed Molly toward the stairs. Let's go up to the attic. When they got up there, Nick was already the high point, the door. So what's next? Now he's above the door and will climb up to them in the cramped attic of the pitch-black room. There's no hiding from him. Emily looked around frantically. What would he chisel him with as he climbed the stairs? Nothing suitable. Emily jerked the shelf. It easily flew off the wall and stood up from the shelf. We have to get off the ladder. But Nick was in no hurry to go up. That fuss wasn't going anywhere. He needed his victim to understand and realize everything. He's not a run-of-the-mill thug. He doesn't tolerate anyone going against him. His pain. He walked around the room downstairs and reasoned you're a complete fool. I picked you up, kept you warm, made you happy. And you were happy. Not many people want to waste their time and energy on a clinical idiot like you. You can't seriously expect anyone to fall for your ethereal beauty. And I did my best to give you pleasure. You have to pay for pleasure. After all, it was already decided. All you had to do was sign it. I'm not mad because I didn't get the money. I'll find it somewhere else. How dare you not listen to me? That's what I don't forgive. Emily, I think he's crazy, Molly whispered. I didn't see that coming. All you girls, I'm coming to have fun, shouted Nick, who's not hiding. It wasn't my fault. He walked over to the table, picked a length of knife from the rack, and began to slowly walk up the stairs. He could feel those at the top fearing and savoring their power. When his head appeared above the top step, Emily brought the shelf down on it with all her might. Nick rolled down, unable to get up immediately, but he did not lose consciousness. Emily heard something fall in the room. Molly looked around, frantically shaking books out of the bookcase. What are you doing? We can't move the books. It's heavy on the stairs. It'll block a flight of stairs. While Nick came to his senses, they managed to drag it up and drop it in the closet. Now Nikolay had no access to the attic. They began to think what else could be done. Startsiva 2's small round windows won't open. You can break them, but you still can't get through. Shouting is useless. No one but Nick will hear. Nick got up, went up and bumped into the closet. Barricaded dollars tried to move or lift. It didn't work. It was heavy, irritably tossed the knife and went downstairs. You don't need an axe, dear. It's a summer house. There should be an axe here. Charles didn't understand what Molly's call meant. That's weird. She's gone to a friend's house in the country. She calls in the middle of the night before her grandmother has a chance to say anything. Something's happened to Molly. But what could have happened? She accidentally pressed it, and then she reset it. No, it doesn't look like that. At least she said, "Oh, I'm sorry, it was an accident." And now there's no answer on the phone. Do you know where she went? Just a direction somewhere nearby. Wait, I have Molly's parents' cell phone number when Emily was looking. I didn't give it to you just in case. I can get the address. But it's not appropriate to call in the middle of the night. Well, it's decent now. Just don't scare them by getting the address. I'll call Uncle Kostya. We'll go together. Kevin didn't live far away. 10 minutes later, he picked Chuck up at the front door. They drove quickly through the empty night streets out of town. The feeling of distress lingered. Kevin drove as fast as he could, so as not to be late. Unlike Elizabeth, he immediately believed that something terrible had happened. Molly was in danger. Nick was in no hurry. He methodically searched for the axe. He went into the barn, went through everything. Looked under the porch, no sign of it. Where'd you put it? Turned out to be simple. Near the stacked pile of logs for the stove with an axe in his hand, Nick was climbing the stairs maiden. I'm coming for you. Emily, come here. Sit on the closet so we can't move it. You hurry up, Molly. I'll go to him. He's coming for me. He doesn't want you. He'll let you go. Don't be stupid. You won't let anyone out of here. You better look for something else. You could hit him over the head. He's completely insane. If he kills us, he won't even go to the hospital. Nick downstairs was chopping down the closet with an axe. The gap was getting bigger, just a little bit more. And he'll end up in your attic. Hey, lumberjack, don't ruin our cabinets. At the bottom of the stairs stood Charles. Nick turned around and went for the mush with an axe in his hand. He backed away, taking it out of his pad at the front of the stairs, and Kevin smashed him over the head with the stool. The second blow was too much for his head, and Nick collapsed without feeling. Kev and Chuck forehanded. Both of them used ropes to pull him down from the closet, which was not easy. The girls couldn't lift it, and the men at the bottom couldn't lower it. The wide one won't fit. We slid back to the attic and climbed through. Kevin went to Molly. Molly, my girl, what did he do to you? You're hurting me. I'm gonna call an ambulance. Uncle Kev, don't. It's just a little bit of damage to his face. It's not fatal. What kind of uncle am I to you? My dearest little man. Molly could see that Uncle Kev was really scared for her. Not as scared for the asshole with the axe as he was for her. How close and dear was he? I guess if Daddy was alive, he'd be just as worried about her, wouldn't he? You're my darling. It's all right. Uncle Kev was crying and Molly was comforting him. Chuck called the police. While they were waiting, he woke up. Nick, he's alive. Kev was upset. You should have killed such an abomination. Chuck spilled the wine. Let's have a drink. We need Nick loaded into a police car. We can finally go home. Emily, remember that fortune teller I told you about? She said that 2 men big and small would get me out of trouble. Chuck, of course, is no longer a little man, but she was talking about him. And Uncle Costa already has 2 matches. I think I'm beginning to believe, but you believe, and I'll never believe that I have no fate. Elizabeth blamed herself for what had happened. You shouldn't have let Molly go to the country house. How could she not have sensed the danger? If not for Charles' insistence, tragedy would have happened. How could she, so shrewd, calculating her efforts just 3 steps ahead, have allowed such a situation to happen? She had chosen the wrong girlfriend for her granddaughter, but now Emily had not failed. Too late. There was too much between her and Maria. More and more often Elizabeth thought that the grandchildren live their own lives, and her influence on them tends to 0. Perhaps it was old, it was time to put the family in Kevin's hands. Ninel, although Ninel is not drawn to the head of the family correct, but spineless. And here Kevin, though do not share her views, but a man with a pivot has always acted on his own. His only weakness is Molly. Elizabeth, after much deliberation, decides to gather the whole family, look at everyone, assess who is fit for what, and then make a decision. Kev, of course, shows up with his silent wife. There's no bullshit about Ninel of the dog. Of course she's alone. Charles, thank God, hasn't gotten a girlfriend yet. What to do with Molly? I doubted she'd invite Peter. And Helen wouldn't stand for a second time. When Grandma announced her will, Molly got worried. Leo could not be invited, and she didn't intend to introduce anyone else to the family. She called Emily for advice. After the horrible accident at the cottage, they'd become very close. Molly didn't bother. They invited Leo. You have to introduce him to the family at some point. If Grandma doesn't like him again, it's her problem. I take it you've made up your mind too? No, you can invite Peter. But then how are you gonna get rid of him? Molly called Leo, I'm inviting you to a family dinner. What again? Molly, I'm sorry, but I'm not gonna play dumb anymore. I really like you, and I don't want to give up hope of ever looking normal in front of your grandmother again. I hate the pilot. He's ruining my personal life. Leo, that's what I'm asking. The pilot's in the past. I want my family to meet Leo. Molly was worried sick. She couldn't even sleep. Although she learned as a child to fall asleep in any situation and at will, she always read a lot. If her parents went to visit, the hosts only had to give her a book in her hands, and no one else saw the child. She read vigorously and everything in a row. At the age of 12, she got her hands on a book by a psychologist. Who was he writing for? Adults or children, I don't know. It was a kind of entertaining psychology. The Thought Hunt was read to death. Where did the book go? Molly didn't know. Everything it said had been erased from her memory, but she remembered the methodology. It was interesting and effective. You're lying in bed, can't sleep. Relax and imagine that your foot is made of absorbent cotton. Warm water is pulled up to your foot and absorbed into the absorbent cotton. The foot becomes warm and heavy. The other the other hand. The whole wadded body is prescribed warm water. Heavy absorbent cotton eyelids do not rise. Lying down uncomfortable. Have to turn over, but can't get the body cotton woolly and heavy. Everything doesn't obey. I fell asleep. It took a long time at first. My body didn't want to absorb the warm water. My thoughts wouldn't shut off. I wanted to scratch. I scratched, but Molly persevered, day after day, practicing. She was very impressed with Leo. Now all she had to do was lie down, relax, feel the heaviness in her body, and command sleep. All set. But apparently Leo is not omnipotent. There are situations when heavy thoughts interrupt any training. Too bad he doesn't remember anything else. Maybe there was something else useful in there? The date of the great social round has been named, the invitation verbally sent out. Had Elizabeth known how things would turn out, Pasternak for redundancy to gather his, as it turned out, unpredictable family. The table is set, the flowers are arranged, Elizabeth, as always, on the throne. The first to arrive are Ninel's parents. But there are no surprises as usual. Kevin and his wife show up next. If Kevin's going to be the head of the family, we should probably fix things up with his wife. She's all right, she's cute, and seems pretty smart. Then came the surprises. Ninel came not alone, brought some shyly long man Ninel, in whom Elizabeth was confident as in herself. Ninel's parents averted their eyes, so they knew and didn't tell her. Maybe she'd really gotten old and stopped realizing what was going on around her. No, she is not against Nina or a wonderful woman and has the right to happiness. But why is everyone suddenly hiding everything from her? Is there really so much pressure on everyone that it's easier to hide? What's the explanation? It's a shame. She had always wanted everyone to be happy. For the first time, Elizabeth allowed herself to think that she was not the only one who determined what a person needed to be happy. The doorbell rang. Charles rushed Granny to the door. It's for me. Oh my God. Did this one invite someone too? Opened the door, Emily came in. Thank God it's gone. Emily, Molly, in your room. Grandma Victoria didn't come to see Molly, she came to see me. Has everyone lost their minds? Or is she being taken to her grave? Elizabeth had not even thought of the expressions that were now on her tongue. So what if she was 5 years older? So what if she couldn't remember how many men she'd been with? It was nothing. It's no big deal. No, Chuck, you're not getting the golden boy. What the hell's going on? If the pilot shows up now, she'll run the whole bunch to hell. A noble upbringing won't hold her back. She's thinking of handing over the power too. Everything's going to hell, and without her, everything's going to fall apart. Okay, let's get to the table. Family dinner has to start on time, no matter what happens. We're seated. There's an empty table next to Molly. Molly, is your guest not coming? Probably not anymore. Elizabeth mentally crossed herself. He's probably drunk. Yes, he can't walk. And then the doorbell rang. Well, not just that. Molly jumped up from her seat. Molly, sit down. I'll get it. Walked to the door, determined to throw on a robe down the stairs. Rest will stand, but will not let into the house. On the threshold stood a young man with a bouquet. A pleasant look, sincere smile, unconventional hairstyle with a long, expensive suit. Elizabeth, this is for you. Sorry for being late at work, delayed. Let me in or I'll be on my way out. But then would you be so kind as to tell Molly I stopped by? There was something subtly familiar about the young man, but Elizabeth couldn't remember where I'd seen him. So it must be Molly's beau. All right, let him come in. Let's see who he is. Come on in, but it's not appropriate to be late. Pardon me, won't happen again. Elizabeth ushered the guest into the living room. Molly opened her mouth in amazement, but Chuck couldn't contain his amazement. The pilot jumped up and shrieked. Oh my gosh, he threw himself around the guest's neck. What pilot? Elizabeth took one look at the guests and realized, yes, that's him. Molly, how's it going in there? Let's go outside. Leo was apologizing, repenting, almost standing on his knees. Molly tried to explain why she did it. She was justifying herself as best she could. I'm sorry, I started it. Leo just played along, but he had nowhere else to go. No, it's your fault. No one made you pretend to be drunk and a plumber. They both shut up. I don't know if it was a circus then or now. Leo, can you explain to me who you are? I'm the technical director of the publishing house where Molly works. I understand not noble blood, not a boss, not a businessman, not your level. But he's a specialist with a name. Apartment, car, everything, and he's in love with your granddaughter. Okay, specialist, let's go to the table. The guests are fainting. Leo went into the living room, and Molly Elizabeth held Molly. Molly shuddered. It was the first time her grandmother had called her that. Do you think I'm a monster who will devour anyone who opposes his will? What I want more than anything is for all of you to be happy. But what kind of happiness is that? Kevin's been marrying all his life. Non'll bring some guy to marry a lid. Charles, I'm not talking at all. I guess I'm wrong. Happiness is different from happiness, according to you? Tell me, how is your Leo better than Peter? Grandma, I've learned so many unexpected things about Peter, I won't tell you, so you won't be disappointed in people. Let's take a look at Leo. Maybe he's worth it. Come on, let's go take a look. Although he was so convincing as a plumber that he's right in front of my eyes. The rest of the story's been pretty much the same. The queen in charge, the vassals agreeing. It turned out that Nellie brought a very intellectual swing mouse Elizabeth by the belt shut to the end of his wife. Elizabeth blessed Ninel quietly in the kitchen so they wouldn't gossip. The widow of a son, after all. Leo behaved impeccably. I'd like to say there's nothing to fault. If Elizabeth were to tell about their first meeting, or the second, they wouldn't believe her. To be honest, Elizabeth was in for a pleasant shock. She liked Leo. She just couldn't get over Helen yet. Charles and Emily didn't bother her too much. Another protest would calm down, meet a cute girl, and she wouldn't remember who Emily was. Molly and Emily were standing on the balcony. Molly, why haven't I heard anything about Leo? Come on, girl, tell me where you got it. Why is Elizabeth reacting so strangely to him? He's a decent young man. Doesn't she like him again? Oh, I've done so many things. And Molly told the whole story. Damn, that's a shame, Helen. I didn't see it. Emily, what's your 46? Oh, come on. I don't have anything with your brother. I don't mess with kids. It's just a show for Grandma. You're setting a bad example for your brother. I'm the pilot today. Remember that fortune teller I told you about? It's weird, but it's coming true more and more. She said they're trying to control me, but they don't know what I want. That's right up my grandmother's alley. She genuinely wants me to be happy, so she tries to keep me out of trouble. She chooses where I go to school, where I work. Not because she wants to control everything and dictate who should live how. She's trying to keep me from making mistakes. But who and when has someone else's experience ever taught anything? The only thing that can teach you anything is the bumps you've made yourself. Yeah, Emily, you're already the jumping expert. Tell me about it. My friend's got a lot of stuff to put away. What else? The fortune teller said it hasn't come true yet. Well, there must be some secret to know, like you don't know the most important thing about yourself. How can you not know something about yourself? Of course, I'm not a perfect girl, with surprises grandmother did not earn, but what grew, that grew. I've been living with myself all my life. What I may not know about love the fortune teller didn't tell Emily. It's been so many years. I don't remember. It was like something you don't see right away, or you don't see right away. What love? I was 10 years old. Here, so much for love. You didn't see Leo right away. Well, tell me if you like it. I do. I do. But that doesn't mean anything. I don't know who else you haven't seen. Leo's not talking. Would you at least say something? What did you say? I don't know. Elizabeth saw the guests off, smiled, and said kind words. It's good that gathered all the secrets became less, and then live each their own life, and do not tell her. Even if she can't influence anything, at least she'll know about it. She's gotten old. It's time to pass on the power. Let someone to look after the young ones who jump out of themselves just to prove their independence. Kevin held on to it. We need to have a little talk. Molly came out with Leo and Emily. Charles jumped out next. I'll lock Emily out. Chuck, baby, go to Grandma. You asked me to help. I did. That's all we agreed on. You walk me home now, and then I'll have to walk you home. Molly intervened. Emily, my brother, a serious, smart man. Remember, he saved you and me. Why do you think he's a boy? He's younger than you, but he's perfectly capable of walking you home. Don't get all bitchy about your wife. You're not. Chuck, walk the girl home. She's got a history of getting into trouble. So friends, nobody's going anywhere, Leo. Here's the car. I already called the driver. He's gonna take us home now. Charles, you home and back. That's Molly's way. I'd ask you out for a ride with us, but I don't think you'd say yes. Can I ask you out on a date? Tomorrow, maybe? I don't think Grandma would mind. I'll call you. I thought I'd send carrier pigeons. The apartment was dark and quiet. Molly went out onto the balcony. Through the open window in the kitchen, the voices of Grandma and Uncle Kevin could be heard. Molly didn't want to eavesdrop. It just happened to be that way. They were talking loudly. They were both on edge. Molly was surprised. She'd never heard Uncle Kev raise his voice before, especially not at Mom. I shouldn't have listened to you. I should have told you a long time ago. Sooner or later, you have to pay for everything you've done in life. I've already got so many debts I won't be able to pay for the rest of my life. How long can you keep quiet? You'll be silent for the rest of your life. You chose this fate for her. Don't ruin the girl's life. She's already lost her father. Now she'll lose her mother in the fall. What will happen? Have you thought about it? No. Kevin, you don't dare make everyone miserable, knowing you're having a hard time, but you've lived with it for years. Keep living with it. It's not just your secret. So you don't think Molly has a right to know the truth. You're always deciding everything for everyone. Now you've decided it's best for her. How do you know what's best? Molly listened and she got scared. What's the secret? What doesn't she know? The fortune teller is right again. You don't know the most important thing about yourself, and neither does the queen who keeps that secret. Grandma, what do we do now? Go right now and demand to be told, or pretend she hasn't heard. If they've been silent for so many years, it must be something very important. Or maybe it's scary. Maybe it was better not to know anything. Molly stood and listened, but realized that she couldn't go on living if she didn't find out what was being kept from her. It's her life, even if it's the most unpleasant and scary ones, but she has to know. Molly snapped out of her seat and ran into the kitchen. I don't know what the secret is. Elizabeth and Kevin stared at her in amazement and remained silent. Grandma pulled herself together and tried to keep the conversation quiet in a way that always worked. Molly, what does that mean? Were you eavesdropping? Grandma's not in the mood for decorum right now. Tell me. There was confusion and pain in Kevin's eyes. He wanted this so badly. So many times he had imagined telling Molly the truth, and now he didn't know how to do it. Poor girl, why should she have to answer for the sins of her parents? It's a terrible shock to find out you've been deceived all your life, even in good faith, but deceived. How do I explain it to her in a way she'll understand? She might not forgive them, hate them. Now, Kevin thought Mom was right. I shouldn't have brought it all up. He berated himself. The girl had lived happily ever after. You never know what's going to happen next. There's no turning back. We have to talk. Hope that Molly is a smart girl, will understand and forgive. Elizabeth also realized that the conversation could not be avoided. God, this is so hard. But is Kevin happy? It's what you wanted. Like I told you not to dredge up the past. Who's better off now? Come on, son, spill it. It's time to pay the bills. What are you guys doing here? Kitchen? Charles came in. Well, that's good. Let him hear it too. It's his business too. Kevin talked about his first wife, Molly's mother, how he loved her and how her family didn't accept her. Talked about what he'd been through since her death. Tried to explain why he gave up his daughter. Told about the terrible longing that made him travel all over the world, just to forget, not to remember. But the longing never went away. After Eugene died, it got worse. He saw Molly grieving and could not tell her that he was the father. A little girl couldn't bear the shock. So he chickened out and kept silent all his life. Molly listened and didn't understand how it could be. The closest people cared about her all her life, and it turns out they lied all the time. Chuck watched amazed eyes. It is necessary in their official noble family, where it is a mortal sin to say indecent words. You can't lie to your grandchildren about such secrets. And what do they do themselves? Grandma, of course, is a tough cookie. Uncle Kev gave his word, but Mom hasn't been hanging around for so many years. Molly stood up and walked silently out of the kitchen. Charles jumped up and ran after her. Her face was very strange. Kevin and Elizabeth looked at her confused and prayed that nothing bad would happen. Molly locked herself in her room. Charles knocked softly, put his ear to it, listened, silence, opened the door. Molly, may I? Molly sat in the dark. Couldn't see. Is she crying? Charles came over, sat next to her, put his arm around her shoulders. It turns out that you are not my own sister, but my cousin Wonders. Molly, cousin. You know, if it turned out that you were a foundling at all, you're still the closest to me. Molly, well, do not worry, of course. Ancestors upset, but basically you have nothing in life will not change. You know, I feel sorry for Uncle Kostya. He got his grandmother with her games in the nobility and spoiled his life. If she'd accepted an unsuitable daughter-in-law into the family, maybe the tragedy wouldn't have happened. And after her death, you could have just taken her into your family. And you'd live your life knowing who your father was. Chuck, Molly exclaimed. They've been lying to me my whole life. Turns out I had a living father living next door to me. I feel like I haven't lived my life. They decide everything for me. They know best what I need. They didn't see fit to tell me who my parents were. Chuck, honey, I don't know how I'm supposed to live my life. Molly. Charles saw his sister getting hysterical. Somehow we have to make it stop. Look on the bright side. Your father's alive. That's a blessing. It's a shame you found out too late. But it's better late. I'm not going to have that. So stop crying. It's not like you're grieving. You should be happy. Why don't you lie down now and think about how you and Uncle Kostya will build a relationship now? Well, there's a father. Molly lay down, but she couldn't sleep, of course, and didn't want to. She wanted to think before going to sleep, which is especially easy to do. Molly liked to save the day's problems for later. I'll go to bed, then I'll think. It was nice to lie in a warm bed and think. The problems didn't seem so important anymore. Thoughts were racing. Molly caught herself thinking about nothing, not the things that seemed important. And now she could not concentrate and decide how to behave with her grandmother, and most importantly, with her newfound father. Then remembered the trip to the sea with Mom and Dad, then suddenly out of the blue, the nightmare of Emily's experience at the dacha. Suddenly, I remembered funny little Chuck. How did he try to walk? A big black cat knocking him down. Then I saw my institute friend's Uncle Kev, who came from an expedition with long hair and a beard. Grandma scolded, but Molly liked him handsome and masculine. Then the pictures began to change like a kaleidoscope. Molly realized she was falling asleep. I wish I had thought of it. There was no strength to resist. In the morning, she felt better. Maybe Chuck was right. There's no grief. Yeah, they lied to her, but they didn't mean any harm. They thought it was for her own good. And having a father like Uncle Kev, not bad at all. Molly realized she wasn't the only one who was freaking out. She had only been through the night with the news, and she was already freaking out. Uncle Kev lived with this secret for 20 years. It's scary to imagine. Another problem is, what do we call him now? Not Uncle and not Daddy. There was a knock on the door. Chuck came in. How'd they send me to get you for breakfast? They're afraid of what they've done. Now they don't know how to look you in the eye. Look, you can get yourself something for this too. What do you want? They'll do anything right now. Charles laughed his ass off. From a new laptop to permission to go out till midnight. Chuck, what are you talking about? How am I supposed to communicate with Uncle Bones now? I can't call him Dad. Oh, Molly, don't sweat it. Just act normal. You don't think he was hoping, do you? He's gonna tell you, honey, I'm your daddy. And you're gonna scream, Daddy, my darling. You're gonna throw it around his neck. I like it so much. Our noble family is such a soap opera. You have to admit, it's cooler than a soap opera. The Queen Mother is a disobedient son. And orphans. Brilliant. Chuck, you're an idiot. There's a little bit. It's just that no one at home can see it. She's got a good brother, though. Supporting, comforting, even, as it turns out, saving her from death. Molly came over and gave Charles a big hug. My favorite boy, what would I do without you? You don't have to wipe snot from me. Let's go to breakfast. No one talked about what had happened. They kept quiet. We understood. It's gonna be a while. Everyone has to get used to the new reality. Everyone felt guilty. Even Molly. What was her fault, though? Just one. Chuck was having fun. But he tried to keep his head down. He knew he could get his ass kicked. Everybody's too nervous. Didn't look at Molly so miserable with poisoned eyes that her heart stopped. Molly thought she had it the worst. She couldn't decide how to deal with her new father. Nellie's not the one losing her daughter. She'd always been a real mother to Molly. Molly couldn't realize that wasn't true. She walked over to Nanelle, hugged her, and whispered, Mommy, help me, it's not so hard. You know how much I loved Daddy. I still miss Nanelle Hale, and tears came. Elizabeth left the table. I don't want the children and grandchildren to see her crying. Somehow things gradually settled down. Everyone calmed down. Life went on as usual, with its troubles and joys. Only Kevin looked at Molly with a question and hope, but she didn't know what to say to him yet. Molly was dating Leo, and we were having fun together. A romance seemed to be brewing. There was no talk of feelings yet, but there were definitely feelings. Anyway, Molly was thinking about Leo all the time, missing him. It was impossible to keep it all inside. I had to have someone to say, yes, you're not wrong. He's the real prince, trustworthy and loyal. And Emily, as luck would have it, was going somewhere over the precipice. Probably another heavenly love. I wouldn't want to get in trouble again. Charles was assigned to play the role of vestmate. He listened to the revelations without complaint. His sister's lover was supportive. He didn't play hard to get. He liked Leo. He's a cool dude. Molly wouldn't let go. He's the real deal. All that grandma's advice wasn't even close. Leo invited Molly to his dad's birthday party. Time to meet the parents. Leo, I'm afraid I met your grandmother. It's an ordeal. My parents are dandelions compared to her. I'll tell you all about my family so you won't be surprised. I already did. We, as in the fairy tale, was a father of 3 sons. The eldest, of course, the smartest. Andrewsha, we have a serious investigator. I wonder how he managed to get married. From him, girls ran away in half an hour, could not withstand his boredom correct and boring junior in the story of the fool. And we just have informals. Dan's a party musician. Hell knows who else. He looks the part with headphones when he's dancing. You recognize him. I drew him when I was doing Helen. But I'm average, you know, not so good. Who's Daddy? My dad is a brutal man, a former car racer, now a solid businessman. And my mom is a goddess. a goddess that a cool car racer worships all his life. Happy they're one love for life. That's what I want. Maybe you shouldn't bring me to your birthday party. Let's do it some other time. No, that's the day. My wife's always bringing her girlfriends. My mom's been nagging me about meeting someone. She's always trying to get me married. If I don't come alone, they'll be happy to have me. Molly was stunned. Excitement made her stutter for some reason. When we got to the house, I couldn't get out of the car. My legs wouldn't move. Leo's mom opened the door. Molly was breathless. How beautiful. As it turned out, her mom was just as worried as Molly. The eldest is married. The youngest is still to be decided. Leo had never brought a girl to the house. I was curious to see who he finally chose. On the other hand, if she didn't like it, what could she do? She wouldn't discourage her son. It would take him another 100 years to choose. But it would be hard to see him make a mistake. Molly hasn't said a word yet, but Mom's heart is relieved. Well done, son. You didn't choose for nothing. Leo's dad came out into the hallway. Oh my God, this is not a family. This is the cover picture. Tall, statuesque, with clear, practiced eyes. Come in, my dear young lady. I'm so glad Leo finally thought to bring you. He's old and smart, but not too bright. When Molly entered the room, she could tell who was who. Leo described the clamps very accurately. The excitement evaporated without a trace. It was easy and fun. This was impossible in their family. Grandmother would not have allowed to behave so directly. But here they didn't act like nobles. They were having a good time. Helen, help me. Mom beckoned Leo and went into the kitchen. Mom, are you going to interrogate me? I'm going to die of curiosity. Where'd you get Molly like that? She studies, works at our publishing house. Beautiful, smart, of noble blood. What kind? But her grandmother made up her own story. She's been tormenting her family with her fantasies all her life. You should see their house. It's like a nobleman's nest, and Molly has somehow managed to stay normal. They're a very nice family. Grandma plays queen. They don't bother her. A good girl doesn't miss out. She's clean, bright. You won't meet another one like her. Mom, why did you praise her so much? It's the first time you've seen her. First of all, I see what's good. Secondly, if you don't get married now, you're gonna be a pain in the ass for me and Daddy. I want to put you in good hands. Oh, I see. You're annoying. Well, there's a little bit. Mom hugged Leo. I want you to be happy. I don't pester the wind in his head. You should get married. Invite Molly over more often. And don't take offense. I'll always be on her side from now on. You know, female solidarity. Thank you, Mom. Leo and I left my parents' house. We didn't want to part, so they went for a walk at night. Walking, silent. Silence together. Sometimes it's more bonding than talking. Molly felt a strange warmth in her soul. Maybe that's what love is. But Leo didn't say anything about love. She couldn't confess it herself. The next day, Emily came running. Thank God, she showed up. As expected, she fell in love again. And again for life. A student from Krasnoyarsk transferred to the institute. A tall, healthy Siberian. He has an old grandmother here. So he moved. Emily saw him and disappeared. Emily, you're going in headfirst again. But to think, to see. Molly, when I see men like that, I can't think. You're the one who's looking and thinking. But for me, you know, my head immediately goes blank. He's so cool, so serious, so thorough. Then think about it. Maybe he's a healthy young man who's got a lot of time on his hands. He could drop everything and come and take care of his old grandmother. He's not real. Without any pitfalls, he can't cheat. Sometimes I think he's a little too honest and straightforward. I'm lucky he noticed me. I'd be hard up for a guy like that, but I wouldn't let him get away. What about Chuck? Molly started the poem. The boy fell in love. The key word being boy. Molly, think about it. I'm where I am and Chuck's where I am. He wants a clean, good girl, and I'll take care of it myself. I can only imagine what would happen to Grandma if I started dating Chuck. I'm crazy, but I'm not that crazy. Somehow you'll explain to him gently that I'm not the one to fantasize about. And how you can be so careful. We're not gonna survive another Nick. Ugh. Not to mention the night before. Only Peter showed up with a huge bouquet, excited and solemn, not like he's proposing. That's all I needed. I guessed it. Right from the doorstep, he held out the ring and talked about love. Molly tried to say something, but Peter was unstoppable. I had to listen to the end. The door opened and Kevin walked in. From the threshold, assessed the situation, saw a confused Molly. A young man. Well, we're on the threshold. Come into the room. Molly took a breath. Some respite. Peter walked solemnly into the room. Grandma had already come out, and a minute later he pulled up brightly. I wonder if they sensed or overheard. What about parenting? Okay, we'll figure it out later. Peter continued his speech. Elizabeth watched with interest. And Kevin, seeing how nervous Molly was, decided to intervene. Peter, I don't think my daughter is ready to answer you. Peter averted his eyes. What daughter? The doorbell rang again. Jesus, what are we so crowded today? Chuck went to open it, shouted from the hallway. Molly, we're really looking for you today. There's another groom here. You should at least schedule them to come into the room. Leo came in with a bouquet, checked out the mise-en-scene. The family's all here. Some pretzel with a ring in his hand. Chuck trying his best not to get infected. Yeah, I'm almost late. Molly, what's going on? Didn't you tell me we already applied? Charles couldn't take it anymore. Through the laughter, he said, Yes, we did. You already applied once. Why didn't you get married last time? Grandma didn't approve, did she? Yeah, Elizabeth. Elizabeth was looking at them. Oh my God. What kind of childish behavior is this? Whether to yell, whether to disperse, or to laugh. She had long ago realized that Leo was the groom. Peter doesn't stand a chance. But Molly wouldn't talk. Molly didn't understand. Is this a continuation of the game? What kind of statement? Last time they lied to piss off Grandma. Now why does she love Leo? He's playing again. Peter was more honest. He came and proposed. Leo realized what was going on with Molly. She can't hide her feelings. Her face was bewildered and disappointed. He went to Kevin. Kevin Marksman, I'm a little confused. I didn't expect to see a young man with a ring. I actually came to see you. I wanted to ask you for your daughter's hand in marriage. I thought I should ask you first. I'm very fond of Molly, and I want her to be my wife. But before I proposed to her, I wanted you and you, Elizabeth, to agree. Molly loves you very much and will not go against your will. Yes, I don't mind. Just what Molly says. It's up to her. Molly, will you marry me? I love you very much. I've met Elizabeth, and they don't ask me, but I don't mind either. My beloved grandmother, father, and little brother. I think I'm getting married.